Which topic would you like to cover?
All right, it is 6:30. Welcome everyone to our January 22nd City Commission Committee of the Whole meeting. We're going to cover two things hopefully here in the 6:30 half hour here. One is a little background on the professional engineering services agreements, which I'll turn to our city engineer in just a moment, and then when our master plan consultant actually gets here, we'll actually jump into that and get the update on the zoning ordinances. I know we have our city planning director in the audience as well, so at least we've got half of the group there. So are you somewhat up to speed on the changes? You did some last minutes this afternoon, so maybe if we get to that point. But we'll jump in for now if we can on the professional engineering services background. I know there's a lot of legwork that's been done on this.
Yeah, there's been a lot of work that's been done, but it's really a pretty easy item for tonight. We've already approved the three agreements to bring these consultants on board. Two of them are renewals. That's Prine and Newhoff and Moore and Brugink. And the third one is Land and Resource Engineering. That is the new one. And we did have some discussions. If I remember right, Elena had mentioned at one point to make sure we take out the 3-year clause we keep using, which we caught. So these are all for just 3 years. There's no renewal part to this. So in 3 years, we will revisit the whole agreement in its entirety and start from scratch, which is a good practice to go through every once in a while. The one change from the agreements that you have in your packet is that early this morning, we added a venue provision to each one of these contracts. And Gary pointed out that if you ever have somebody from out of town, this is a really important item to make sure that your legal battle is in town. And obviously that's important to us, so we've added that to all three, and we will make sure that we continue to add that whenever we get an opportunity to other agreements and contracts.
So when we approve that tonight, it'll be just for the commissioner's benefit. It's if the event that there was litigation, what have you, that it's the home base is going to be within the county of Kent, so that we have home field advantage at that point. So, all right, good stuff there. Anything further in the background? Any questions, commissioners? And we've got a local business that is, quite frankly, has actually been involved with us on a number of things behind the scenes and stuff over time, and have done great work, and excited about having them on board. So we'll have that at the 7 o'clock meeting. While we're waiting for Chris here, Paul, you want us to jump in, or do you want us to bypass? Actually, you know what? Let's jump to the library, the construction manager piece. We'll touch on that little background there.
So on Friday, January 12th, we had interviews with the Walker Library Steering Committee. There were 2 firms that were selected for interviews. That was out of a pool of 7 pre-qualified firms. So we kind of looked at everybody in West Michigan that could do this kind of work, did a little bit of research, gave out some invites, and then also gave out the opportunity for people to send us information and become pre-qualified. We worked through that, got to the very end with 2 firms that were Owens, Ames, and Kimball and Triangle Associates, and both great firms with lots of local experience. The process for last Friday was to give them 20 minutes to do a short presentation that was based on their proposal. Then we had 20 minutes of scripted questions that we let them know in advance. We followed that up with 20 minutes of, I guess, what we called zingers, the questions they didn't know. And so those involved some different scenarios and were maybe a little bit trickier. But both firms did great. We did recommend that Owens, Ames, and Kimball be awarded the project. That recommendation doesn't come lightly. We thought very hard about that and deliberated for quite some time, and then had to follow up with a list of questions. So we take that very seriously because we really like both of these firms. I think one of the pieces of good news here is if you award this to OAK, we're hoping that Triangle will still have a piece in this process because they can do some of the work underneath OAK, and we're going to have some talks about that as well. So hopefully we can get the best of both worlds. OAK, you might remember, has done some very high-profile jobs in Walker. Most recently was the Kent County Road Commission headquarters, which we've reviewed and is a fantastic building, and then also the Michigan State Police headquarters. So this would really add to their list for prominent and generational projects in Walker. So if the commission moves forward with that tonight, we will get them on board immediately. That would mean a meeting as soon as Thursday with our design team, because we're talking about putting one together all ready for this week. We would still have to negotiate a contract with them, but I think we're comfortable enough that we could get them started with some minor work, getting them acclimated to the project. So you would see a contract come in front of you probably within the next month that would be negotiated. And that would be a little different than our standard engineering agreements, because it's a different animal. And so there's a little bit of negotiation that goes into that. You will have probably saw that there was a sheet at the end of the proposal that explained the costs. That is very, very rough and tentative. And that was for the purposes of us having a number in our head as we move forward, because it depends on many moving parts and pieces. But I really prompted them to say, we got to get in the ballpark, so that we have a level of scale of what that cost could be. So don't read too much into that number, because if we need 15 dumpsters instead of 7 dumpsters, we're paying for 15, and there's a lot of things like that in there with porta-johns and temporary electric and things that still have to be worked out.
Because the plan is still I'm sorry, the microphone. The plan at this point for the commissioners that have not been around recently has been, Scott has actually really made sure that, and emphasized on behalf of KDL and the community, that we keep this library open, as long as possible, and we're hoping to be able to do that. It might have to have a temporary location potentially, as one of the options, but
Right.
There's going to be a lot of moving parts out here.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of work left to do. I mean, we've done the fun part, which is the brainstorming and putting a cool site plan together, but now is the real work. And so it's good to have a construction manager on board to help validate a lot of the things that we're doing to make sure they're reasonable and fundable.
Commissioners, any questions for Scott? I think the only thing one thing I think I'm just really excited about, we talked about this tight campus we're going to have of trying to put that building in, and we're going up for the first time, in our city's history. So that's something unique, and I hope it's one of those catalysts for things that we're looking for in Standale or otherwise, that we don't just have this kind of flattened surface, but nonetheless, looking forward to that. So, all right, well, good. So we've got those 2 items out of the way from our city engineer. Traffic control order is basically just a stop sign, and that's a permanent placement at Lincoln Lawns and Marlboro, correct?
Yes.
Yep. All right, and then Chris is here now, so if you're good to go, Chris, I think you were already teed up on there. Will you tap on that mic to make sure it's on?
Yep.
We're good. Floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Do you see the presentation up there? I'll be much more brief than I was last time. What I'd mostly like to do tonight is just walk through the differences between the draft that you saw on the 8th and the draft that we have tonight. Some of these were requested by staff, others requested by you, commissioners. And then we have one yes or no, up or down decision to be made before the final vote tonight. So I will talk about that. I also want to talk a little bit about the map. Just make sure that we're all comfortable with the action that needs to be taken on that tonight. So first, whoops. Just went through that. So let's just talk about some of the revisions. First is we did add, we added 3 uses and renamed a 4th. And this was at request of staff, and it's in response to some existing land uses that are out there, and this will allow them to better be categorized in the new ordinance. The first couple are related to animals, veterinary clinics and animal hospitals. That's currently phrased as just animal hospitals, which is consistent with the existing ordinance. Adding that veterinary clinics in there and refining the definition a little bit, which isn't reproduced here but is in your draft, will just help us better define some of these uses. And that, of course, will be permitted in your commercial districts, your industrial districts, and your overlays, and would be a special use in your agricultural district because this is the type of use that can be done on acreage in a more rural setting. And then relatedly, an animal rescue or shelter, part of the purpose of defining this use is to make sure that it's clear that it is different than a veterinary clinic or animal hospital, particularly in the way that animals would live permanently on these uses. So that is a special land use in all the districts I just mentioned, except Standale and Alpine, where it's not appropriate really at all. Next one is a couple more levels to our sort of industrial spectrum. We didn't talk a lot about this level, but the proposed ordinance has 2 land uses called low intensity manufacturing and high intensity manufacturing. You can kind of get a picture of what those would mean, right? And those tie to whether the I-2 district is needed or a special use permit is needed. We're adding artisanal manufacturing, which would be kind of one level below low intensity, and would be available as a special use in the commercial districts. That's to account for some existing land uses that are in those districts now. And a contractor's shop, which is also kind of a quasi-commercial, quasi-industrial land use. We have some current examples. Those would be permitted in industrial and special uses in commercial. Next change made since January 8th is regarding steep slopes. Previously, we had these defined as 15% grade or higher. We have increased that at staff's request to 20% grade. And then obviously the biggest impact, as we've discussed before, of that change is on the calculation of net density. So I did include that language again here on the slide. Also related to this, the discussions of gross density and practical density, which were in the ordinance before, have been removed because those are not actually terms that are used. They're used in the master plan to explain why we're going to use net density, but this is the implementation of that master plan section and doesn't need to include those terms. It's confusing. So we just talk about how to calculate net density, and we're using 20% grade as an objective measure of what a steep slope is. Next. Administrative titles. The zoning ordinance refers to a number of different people who may or may not work for the city by their title. We've replaced most, if not all, of those references with the phrase city manager or their designee. That means that administrative rearranging can happen within the city staff without rendering the zoning ordinance out of touch, right? So this way there don't have to be zoning amendments just because someone changed their title from planning director to community development director or something of that nature. So this section in 3.01 says the city manager may authorize city officials whose titles may include but are not limited to, and then there's a list basically to enforce this ordinance. Next one, backyard chickens, requested by the commission. Actually, it was talked about at the subcommittee, and I missed it, and Elena caught it, and we made the change last time. So this would be a decrease in the minimum lot size to have backyard chickens from about just under 22,000 square feet or half an acre to 11,800, which is the minimum lot size in your A district, I believe. Next one, clarification on construction timing. So there's, under the site condo section, there is now a new section saying that all the infrastructure needs to be in before construction. And we've rearranged the subdivision section to make it sort of consistent with that, but specific to subdivisions. And this sentence has been added, which not only requires all infrastructure in, but also says no construction before the plat is finished. And then we've removed some language later on that was redundant. So we're hoping this is more consistent and also more concise. And then, oh yeah, I already talked about site condominiums first. Are there any questions on any of those?
Commissioners, seeing none?
Okay.
Yep, we're good.
Thank you. Next issue to be discussed is fence permits. Currently, city does not require a permit to put up a fence. We have rules, regulations on fence height, location, etc., but we do not require a permit. That's great up front for someone who builds a fence that is in compliance with the ordinance. It's not so great when we end up having to do code enforcement on somebody and they have to tear down their existing fence because we didn't catch it until construction was finished because no permit, right? The current draft of the ordinance would require a zoning permit prior to the construction of a fence. So the question before the commission is, would you like to start requiring zoning permits for fences, which is different from what you've been doing, but maybe more efficient in the long run, or do you want to continue with your current practice of fence standards being complaint-based? And I think at this point we should sort of pause. And is it appropriate to have that discussion at this point, committee of the whole? All right, so I think it's appropriate to pause and have that discussion.
All right, commissioners, a little straw poll. I'm going to come left to right here.
I didn't see this in the pack. I haven't really thought much about it. Well, if you had if we put this into effect where you have to have a permit, and you don't know that, and you don't get one, you put up a fence, and it's not compliant, we might have you take it down, just as we would have in the past, without having a permit necessary. On the other hand, if you put up a fence without a permit, and turns out it is compliant, why do we care? So I'm not sure.
Okay.
Thinking aloud.
I agree with what you were saying, Tom. So, Steve, do you get a lot of kickbacks on fences? I mean,
You want to rephrase?
well, you know what I mean.
So,
I mean, in that.
What I'll
with
give
zoning?
you is the genesis of this item for inclusion. This came from the work group, the staff side of the work group. I think there were some concerns about fences that have popped up in the past and been problematic.
I think the discussion too is with the amount of applications that come to ZBA mostly for
That's,
fences.
yes.
Right.
So
to get
it
the
was
variance
trying to
process.
eliminate the need for them to go to ZBA and pay for that ZBA fee for them for fences, for like corner lots
For- For what it's worth, for me, I could go either way on it. I'm not in love with installing a permitting process, but I do understand that we do end up with like problems with fences
That's-
ending up at
especially going
ZBA.
to easements too. I think that was the other issue we talked about.
Yeah.
And that happens
Staff.
a lot
Yeah,
too.
I've had folks in my ward reach out to me about problems that they've had with fences and then
As
with the
did I.
city and then,
This-
lots of finger pointing and communications going back and forth, things like that. So I don't know. I don't love adding a permitting process, but I can go either way.
So you're kind of on the fence on it, huh?
So Mayor,
Is-
if we were given the ZBA comment and there's the admin of doing all that, if we did have an ordinance in place that says you do need to get a permit, and we get the word out, because we need to get the word out so people
Yeah.
know about it, otherwise it's not much point. We are at least on the sort of high ground, hey, you didn't ask for a permit you were supposed to have.
Right.
Sorry, you're gonna have to take this down, but we have a
Is there any way
process
that
you
we
didn't
could
follow.
do like a site plan review or like a plan review instead of pulling a permit for it, if that makes sense? Like a lower cost, less
that's a great
intensive
idea.
aspect of it than pulling a permit? I'm just
So your
talking out loud.
suggestion would be that like they would submit to staff like, hey, here's where I want to put my fence on the map of my
Yeah,
property.
and then
And
have
site
like a
plan.
lower fee associated to it rather than like a permit fee of review then accepting of it.
But
I
then
don't know.
How do we communicate that to the residents, that has to occur?
I think that maybe Paula can answer this, but do you get a lot of requests from NCDD about people asking about fences and stuff?
Do get some questions. Frank historically might have more information than I do.
Just generally speaking, I think that the case for a permit or not, you can argue it either way. The number of questions we get per year, it's seasonal, obviously. But in the springtime, I think our folks up front in the Community Development Department get a lot of questions. So we actually have an FAQ sheet for fences that we can just hand out and say, here's the code. But does that go as far as checking for easements on property, particularly stormwater easements? No, it doesn't do that. How many problems do we have? I would say we don't have, it's not like there's a rash of fence issues out there. We have gone to court recently, and there was a appellate court on that for a violation issue in a ZBA case that was actually denied and went its course. But I have seen situations where people put up some fairly expensive fences and then have to take them down, and they're not very happy. So you can argue, I think, either way. Your staff tends to say, hey, we're going to have to grow into something like this, and we'll have to work out a financial model, but it's budget time, so that's appropriate. I don't think we're talking any kind of a big permit fee here. If anything, it'd probably be $25. So it certainly wouldn't be a huge fee for a permit. And we may have to work with Chris's firm to help process some of the permits, which will probably hit a peak in the spring. But I think what we did from a staff standpoint is we said, hey, it'd be a good idea, but if the city commission doesn't want to do this, we'll be fine. But just so everybody knows, you occasionally will run into issues, and inevitably someone will put up a very expensive fence within a drainage easement or somehow violating the ordinance, then it's like, wow, you've got to move that fence. So that becomes obviously a hot button issue.
And I think the last few years, we've seen our share of those when they've come up. They've been, that's exactly what it's been the fences and the easement. So, okay. Coming around, and it was feedback, I knew what you meant, not kickback, so.
I'm so tired.
It's all good, having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the thought of having a smaller fee, and I like the site plan review, so it's kind of my 2 cents.
Okay. Okay, as in, thumbs up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I'm opposed to having a formal permit process. I mean, if we have to educate and inform the public, if we put this in place, why not educate and inform the public beforehand to at least try that first, as opposed to, I mean, a negative, punitive kind of, you didn't, do this, or
Is that like something that we could do maybe on social media in the springtime, like when we would normally see?
newsletter, yeah.
I don't know. I don't think that's a
Just,
bad idea
and
either.
I don't know, work through the realtors, somehow I don't know. It just seems like if we're going to have to publicize something and educate people, why not try that first? That's where I'm at.
But that's not something, we could always bring it up to ordinance later, right, if we wanted to add it.
Sure. Yep. Okay. Coming your way? Either way, okay. And you're either way.
I think so too.
So maybe leave it as is right now, and then if we need to address down there, but probably, maybe we can even ramp up the education process a bit, I think, for the community. I do that, Commissioner Gilbert made a great point about sometimes there can be a little bit of an overreach of adding another process to the plate, but I want to see, are we solving a problem or not, and acknowledging that we do have some, and I'd have to say it's the majority, but we've seen at ZBA the last couple of years have been related to fences, so it's there, but it's not been enough to where, are we solving a problem by enacting an ordinance at this point? So let's leave it for now. That'll be a thumbs down on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thumbs up to the thumbs down. So we'll,
What's that? Yeah.
There you go. It's fine. So we'll strike that.
Well, let's
yes,
Strike the
so we'll
fence
strike the section of the zoning ordinance that says zoning permits required
Yep.
for fences. That leaves the city with all sorts of flexibility to take other actions to try to correct this problem, as have been suggested tonight. So we'll take that direction.
Yep, thank you.
Next is the map. And Commissioner Burke expressed some concern to us about what exactly action the city commission's taking by approving the new map. So we've provided, and I have hard copies. So our office has put together a map of the parcels that would actually be rezoned. Then just blanking out the rest, with the idea that the city commission motion tonight could be to change these parcels rather than to adopt an entirely new map. Practical impact is the same, but there's no implication that the city commission is happy with the zoning of every single parcel. It's just they're not up for discussion tonight. And there's no implication that anything's changing other than what we've talked about before, which is what's on the screen right now. All C1 and C2 parcels become C1, which, come to think of it, means that if you're C1 now, you're not really being rezoned on the map. You're still C1. Rules have maybe changed a little bit, but you haven't really been changed on the map. And all C3 and C4 go to the new C2. All ML and MP go to the new I1. And all MH go to the new I2, which, come to think of it, means they're not really being rezoned either. It's just the name of their district is changing. And then, of course, the overlays are created and added to the map. So those are the map changes. I have on here the map that you all have now in front of you on the screen, so the public can see it. Additionally, just a couple of zoom-ins. That's the Standale area. These are just sort of the clusters of where the rezonings will happen. Standale area, the Remembrance Corridor, the I-96 Northridge 3-mile corridors, and the Alpine area. Not surprising, those were a lot of the focus areas of the zoning update. Given that, I'll take any other feedback, last-minute revisions, etc.
Commissioners, questions, discussions for Chris or the group? Did we capture the spirit and the intent from our last meeting, the changes that we needed to make? Okay. Kind of straw poll, again, I'll come left to right. We're good with this for the 7 o'clock hearing for the second reading with the fence permit update stricken from the code update. So when we make that motion, somebody just can clarify that one item. Commissioner's good over here? Okay. Managers? Anything? All right. Planning director, anything? Good? All right, Chris, any parting words of wisdom?
Nope. If there is an affirmative vote tonight, be in touch with the clerk's office on noticing and effective date, because the final version will need that effective date. And then we'll be ready to roll with this new ordinance. So thank you,
Yep.
Commissioners.
Yeah, thank you. And Chris, we are good. Do we need Chris for the 7 o'clock? So you're good to go if you want.
Great. Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone, and congratulations on your new ordinance.
Awesome, thank you. All right, it is 6:57. We'll see where we're at here. We'll start, city managers down to your left.
Do you want to talk about these couple of resolutions real quick?
Sure.
The first one is kind of our delinquent personal property tax resolution. We do this every year. And this year takes care of the 2018 roll. And if you've followed this over the years, this list has become shorter and shorter and shorter. So Treasurer's Office and Assessing are doing a good job catching those businesses. And most of these businesses on the list are, I think just about every one of them is non-existent anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not worth chasing 9 cents. And we can just strike about $1,000 off the roll and call it clean for 2018. So if there's any questions on that. All right, and then the other resolution is our annual special assessment roll that we approve for Standale, the DDA district, for the streetscape special assessment. This went before the DDA last week, and they recommended approval. We had one minor change on there for a parcel on the south side of Kinney. Hair Unlimited is the parcel, so we've reduced that slightly because they do not have a street light in front of their building, so we're not going to charge them the full assessment, but we still do a little snow plowing and some lawn care there, so we don't feel like they should continue to have a full assessment there. So, and then there's some notes on the far right of that resolution. You can see there's some parcels that we're not charging the full assessment quite yet, but we will up that when the new street lights go in next summer. So next year's assessment will probably increase a little bit for those parcels. Those are mainly the new parcels across from Meyer. The dental office, the Culvers, all those they have. We do the snow plowing and landscape maintenance, but no streetlights yet. But next year when the new ones go in, they'll be fully assessed. So again, we fall under the cap that we have set when we set this original district up. So it's really the same fees as last year for just about all the property owners. So.
Any questions for the city manager? All right, we're just about at 7. One real quick thing, Madam Clerk, on the minutes from January 8th, Chris Corey's name, and I do the same thing, the correct last name spelling just as a K, starts with a K. Yep. We can get that to you right after the meeting, but, and then the second is down under public appeal hearing. The public comments were heard on behalf of, it's the third bullet point from the bottom. It's got behave instead of behalf. I get the spirit of it, but it's so small thing.
Kind of like what I did earlier.
Yes,
I
and
didn't push back.
Corey's, is it K-H-O-U-R-I?
Yeah.
K-H-O-U-R-E?
EY.
K-H-O-R-E-Y.
K-H-O-R-E-Y.
There we go.
EY.
Yes.
There you go.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, boy.
and I've made the same mistake, so for what it's worth. All right, we are at 7 o'clock. It is time for our regular city commission meeting to call to order. I'd like to invite Commissioner DeShane to deliver the invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Shall we pray? Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin our meeting. Please give us the wisdom to make the best decisions for the betterment of our great city and the guidance to nurture the bonds within our community. Please fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make decisions that will affect the residents and the businesses that reside in our city. And always continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater glory of you, and for the service of the city and its people. Please be with those who are hurting and in need of healing, and watch over our police and our fire department and our military to keep them safe and out of harm's way. And lastly and selfishly, please continue to help our Detroit Lions restore the roar. We ask these great things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I'd like to invite everybody to stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. If I could please ask our clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Carey,
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert,
Present.
Commissioner Babcock, Commissioner Groders,
Present?
Commissioner Chase, Commissioner DeShane,
Present.
Commissioner Burke.
Present.
All right, the band's all together. Good to see everybody. We just discussed the minutes from January 8th, 2024. Is there any other further discussion on the minutes from the January 8th meeting? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support, please.
Motion
Amen.
to approve as amended.
Support.
Commissioner Gilbert, Commissioner DeShane. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. We are good on the minutes. Next is public comment on any agenda items only. Seeing none, gentlemen do not wish to speak, so we will go to consent agenda. So we have 5 items, and I'm going to read all 5 out. First is the expenditures in the amount of $333,058.50. The second is the snowplow license appeal decision and order of Michigan Lawn and Landscape. Traffic control order 279 for a permanent stop sign placement at Lincoln Lawns Drive Northwest and Marlboro Street Northwest. And the fourth item is the 2024 professional engineering services agreements we discussed at our 6:30 committee of the whole meeting. And lastly is the Walker Library construction manager recommendation, which we also discussed at our 6:30 meeting. I'm going to first ask our clerk, is there anything pertinent we need to know on not traffic control, on the license appeal decision that we made?
Just that he did come into the office today and dropped off his signed copy. So Mr. Roseboom is aware of the decision that was made, so.
And he's been getting the letters on the truck?
I believe so,
think
yes. That letter is due on the 29th. He's to send that to me in writing. So I haven't seen any of his trucks, but I have heard that others have seen the verbiage on his trucks, so.
Yeah, I mean, we're making steps here, and I think understand that whether the weather's been, it's a small business, want to be sympathetic, empathetic to the things that we ask of them, but the big thing was don't dump the snow in the street, and when we call with issues, would you please respond? So I feel like there was a proactive check-in. I know today, I think, had got an email touching base. So that all being said, that's that item. Is there any other questions for our city engineer on items D or E? Or even C for that matter? Seeing,
I have a question.
Yes.
On the agreement, just, can someone clarify for me the $2,500 to be held in escrow for the license term and returned upon the issuance of the next, whatever? What happens to the money if he is not compliant?
then that money is lost at that point. If the license is not renewed, that money is an escrow in a good faith measure.
And what happens to it then?
Probably lapse into the city's general fund would be my guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think that we've not had it. I'm cautiously optimistic that
Yeah.
we're going to, the point got across. I do like the proactive approach. I want to recognize that, the reach out, the letters are getting on the trucks, and we're not getting, any official complaints. And we went through a very heavy belt of snow, so if we were gonna have some stuff, it's either gonna be then or maybe the next one we have in the month of February. We got one more coming yet, so, but no, fair question. Maybe I can ask our city manager if there's just a quick clarification, not for this meeting, but we can double check.
Yeah, that would be, I think what Steve said, that's what we've done in the past. If we've had to cash those in, they go back into the general fund, and usually it would go back, in the buildings case, applied towards the inspection fees or some, or the cost of the inspector going out. But in this case, it's more of just a guarantee to make sure he does what he does.
Yep.
They're supposed to do.
Yep. Okay. All right, any other question on any of the 5 items under the consent agenda? Seeing none, entertain a motion for approval and support, please.
So moved.
Support.
Commissioner Groders, Commissioner Chase, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Item number 8 is passed with all 5 items for the consent agenda. Next on the list is Resolution 24-699, resolution to accept the 2018 delinquent personal property tax list and authorize signature waiver and consent to strike petition. Our city manager just covered that at the 6:30 committee of the whole meeting. Is there any other questions on Resolution 24-699? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion for approval and support, please.
So moved.
Commissioner Babcock, Commissioner Burke, support. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, thank you all. And then next is Resolution 24-700 to approve the 2024 Special Assessment Roll for the Walker-Standale Downtown Development District. City Manager just covered that as well in the 6:30 committee, the whole meeting. Is there any other discussion on Resolution 24-700? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support on that as well.
I'll make a motion.
Support.
Commissioner DeShane, Commissioner Babcock. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, 24-699 and 24-700 were both passed. Next on the list is Ordinance 24-674 is the second reading for the zoning ordinance update, which we just received at the 6:30 committee of the whole meeting from Chris Corey from McKenna Associates. Is there any other discussion on the second reading of this ordinance? Seeing none, we discuss removing the fence permit from the ordinance, striking that from. So if somebody would make a motion with that in mind in support, it would be appreciated.
I'll make a motion for the zoning ordinance update, but to strike the fence permit requirements.
Support.
I have a motion for Commissioner Chase, support for Commissioner Burke. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you, we're good. Any other public comment? Going once, going twice. All right. Commissioner, City Manager comments. City Manager, I'll come back down to.
Sure. I'll sound like a broken record, but it's budget time, so this week we're meeting with all the individual departments, getting their requests in so we can get a first draft rolling on that. I heard Steve talking beforehand, so I know he's working on trying to get a mobility and infrastructure committee together. In the meantime, we'll provide placeholders in the budget. We're starting to build now for projects, whether they're sidewalks, parks, so kind of like we did the past year. And then once the committee meets and decides, we can plug those in. So we know things will be coming, so we'll accommodate that. And then after that, we'll start working on finance committee meetings to dig into some of the details. But yeah, full steam ahead. So that's about I'll be working on the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Assistant City Manager.
Just one item. If you would pencil in on February 21st, a joint work session with Planning Commission, City Commission, and ZBA to kick off the master plan update. I think we'll start with kind of a discussion, the relationship between the master plan and the zoning ordinance, the roles of all three bodies, and then get into some specific issues. So we'll put an agenda together and get that published and out to you folks well ahead of time. But I think that is going to be the date, and we may start a little bit earlier and have it catered. nothing, extravagant, but Jimmy John's or something like that. So we'll be able to work through dinner and do a couple of hours on the master plan. Keep us on pace with that moratorium so we can get that completed in time.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Commissioner Berg?
Well, I was gonna ask for a joint session with the planning commission in my remarks tonight. I don't have to do that because the assistant city manager just covered it, but I will talk a little bit about some recent planning commission meetings I've been to, or I've either been to them or watched. There's a development proposal in Ward 1, our part of the city, for Commissioner Gilbert and I've been getting a bunch of calls on it. I know he has as well. We had those couple of joint sessions with the Planning Commission where we talked about, I think in a pretty unified fashion up here as city commissioners, that we believe in the master plan. We want to start buying into and implementing the master plan. And watching these Planning Commission meetings, I just get the feeling that they're just not thinking forward like that. They're just thinking, I have the zoning, I have to look at it in accordance with the zoning. I'm not looking at the vision for the future. So I think it's very important that when we get these sessions going, we educate all of ourselves, myself included, of the real authority the Planning Commission has, the real discretion they have. It is not a by right board, it's a discretionary board. They have a lot of authority to guide where the city's going based upon the master plan. In fact, our ordinance, our current ordinance, calls for them to do so. Our new ordinance that we just approved calls for it crystal clearly. So it will be easier to see it in the new one, that it says very clearly, make sure you've got a design towards the view of the master plan, a design towards the future of the city. As elected officials, I think we publish a master plan. It shows everybody where we say we're going to go, and we're accountable to going where we say we're going to go. When I have folks in other parts of the ward who might complain about Northridge and some of the industrial things going on there, encroaching on their neighborhoods, I'm like, hey, I defend the master plan. This is what the master plan says. This is what we've said we're going to do, and we're going to go do that, and I'm accountable for that. If the flip happens, though, and we have areas that aren't zoned according to our vision for maybe some open space or maybe some other ideas, and we don't stick with our master plan in those cases, I don't know what to say, because we're not following our vision. So I think it's very important that we get together with Planning Commission and we get a vision out there and we help them understand, look, we're accountable up here at City Commission, and we need you guys to go implement what we ask you to implement. So I look forward to it. Thank you.
So, Commissioner DeShane?
I agree, Tom. I think that would help get the momentum going on that project if we all kind of meet and talk about that. I just wanted to comment what a great job I think our DPW did over the last week. And trust me, there's a lot of snow and it doesn't seem to have stopped, but good job.
Tom kind of touched on it, but we had Planning Commission last week, Wednesday. We did approve Maverick, which is a new name for Come and Go, so that'll be at Wilson and Leonard. The footprint of the building is slightly smaller, but still same capacity and similar inside to a Come and Go. And then we did table Green Ridge due to an impasse reached with Planning Commission, so that will be on the agenda for the next meeting.
And they're very similar stores. They're based out of Utah.
Yep.
And I had a chance to see some by my office where I was at last week, and they're fairly identical. So.
Yeah, I think it was like 500 square foot smaller.
Almost same color signs too, so it's almost like it.
Yeah.
Literally, it'll be a smooth transition. So, Commissioner Groders.
I attended the DDA meeting last
Thank you.
week. Yes. And we're moving forward with a small subcommittee to coordinate with a marketing committee, like a concerted effort to I guess, I'm not sure what the word is I'm looking for.
Branding.
The brand.
Branding, yes, we want a brand stand-in. Thank you.
When you think of that, that's an exercise we played in the hallway a little bit of. We played the word game, describe Standale in a word, and there isn't, Zealand, I want to call them out. They've done a very nice job with that Feel the Zeal campaign. Holland's done a great job with their downtown as well. We saw this summer while we were out there, but we're struggling finding that. We've talked about connections, we've talked about destination, but I mean, you can go there and pretty much get everything that you need within the shopping in that district. So what does it end up becoming? So I'm looking forward to hearing I'm not that smart or creative, so I'm looking for you all to come up with those ideas. is.
Yeah, we're gonna have a short meeting tomorrow morning with the marketing organization that can hopefully point us in the right direction.
Outstanding. Good stuff. Commissioner Babcock?
Echo what Roxanne said to the DPW. Thank you for all the work, seeing you out quite a bit over the last week. And I did everyone a favor and took out a deer last Monday, so there's one less in our population.
So thank you for calling the herd. Yes.
I did, yeah. Barely, though. I was on Leonard going like 20, 25, so, yeah, yeah, they had to put him down humanely, sadly.
I'll just quickly say thank you all for all the help and support on the zoning ordinance update. Glad to be done with it, and now on to the next phase of the process where we'll get into the master plan updates, and hopefully we can do a better job of painting a clear picture within that document of what we're looking for, how we're trying to get there, and provide some guidance not only to the developers but to our own planning commissioners and other folks who are impacted by that plan. So appreciate all the work, and more to come.
Madam Clerk?
So our first mailing of absentee ballots to those who asked for them went out on Friday. Those are starting to hit mailboxes as of today. I've heard some people have already received them, which is great. Fast turnaround for the mail. And then we are currently communicating with any voters on our permanent ballot list who have not returned their selection form. Some of you may have received our emails today regarding that. There was a glitch with the communication, but it is ironed out now. So we are required by law to notify anybody on that permanent ballot list that has not turned in that selection form by email, phone call, text, and letter. So there will be a lot of communication going out to those voters. So I just want to make you all aware of that. But ballots are available in our office if anybody just wants to come in and get it.
Debbie, I just have one question. How long do they do the pre-voting for on that?
The early voting,
Yeah.
it's 9 days. So it'll start
Is that gonna be an issue with that joint meeting?
Yeah, we'll probably, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is a little bit off the cuff, but we'll find another location for
Okay.
it. City
Sorry, I
has
just
other
thought about that.
structures we can
We
go
talked
to.
about Station 2 potentially
Yeah.
being the most logical. We could be
Upstairs.
in one of the school buildings if need be.
Exactly.
So we've got some options. Yep. Good stuff. Okay. City engineer?
This may be hard to believe, but the construction season is beginning this week. So you're gonna see tree removal along the railroad on Bristol. Don't be alarmed, but most of the tree removal these days has to occur before the end of March, based on, is it Indiana something bat? So it's happening way early. You may get some phone calls, but we should be okay. They've got all the rights and easements in place.
And I think it's fair to acknowledge our city engineer, while he's sitting there, he didn't pay me for this either. Actually stole one of my Diet Cokes recently, but just two. But I can't think of a time, some of us that have been around for a while, I cannot think of a time we have had the workload placed on you and your office that we have. So on behalf of all of us, we're very grateful for the work being done. It seems like sometimes you come up here, not always with the good news, because the cost over, from the budgets but things have started to come a little bit more favorable. They're starting to settle down a little bit. I know it's not going to be the case for everything, but we're on task with a lot of very big things in the city, and we're not trying to eat that elephant all in one sitting. The stuff is spaced out over multiple years, and just like how we're doing it. So well done. Thank you on behalf of all of us. So not closing every road at the same time either. The only other thing not been touched on is Wednesday, January 10th, city managers, city engineer, myself sat in on our annual partner review with The Right Place. And they just came and basically it's a strategy of making sure we stay consistently in line. I don't think that's any secret. We've enjoyed a very strong relationship with that economic development partner. Daryl had sat on the board for a number of years as well, and has some really good work and insight to things, and just we value the partnership, and I want to acknowledge the fact that they came out, gave us some updates of things that they're working on, ask what our plans and what we're working on up here. So just kind of shared the information. They've got their arms around some good things, and I believe we're in a really good spot going forward. Looking forward to more of that business coming into Walker in the next year. So with that being said, if there's no other discussion from the group, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, and we'll see everybody back on February 12th. Anybody?
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Gilbert, Commissioner Groders. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.